Today I have some scary night shift horror stories, and before I begin, I want to thank you for the constant support on my channel. I will be posting these stories regularly, so make sure that you have subscribed to Mr. Scare. A couple of years ago, I worked the night shift at a hotel. It wasn't super fancy, but it wasn't a seedy motel or anything either. In fact, it was in a decent area of town. It was geared for extended stay guests, who were mostly there for work. There were not a lot of late arrivals, so it was a pretty nice gig. I got paid to just kick it in the back room and browse Reddit until the sun came up, which is what I was doing with my nights anyway. After midnight, we locked the front doors. If someone sounded the buzzer, I could open the doors manually to let them in. One night, at about 1 in the morning, a young woman ran up and began pounding on the front doors. She was screaming at the top of her lungs.
Please help me! Open the fucking doors! Please don't let them get me!
Shit like that. So I opened the doors for her and grabbed the phone and punched in 911. She sprinted in, and I just watched the doors close behind her. Agonizingly slow, positive that her attackers would slip in before the automatic doors closed and locked again. But no one came. She kept babbling, telling me to call the police. Call the police, please, you can't let them get me. She kept saying them, which freaked me out more than anything. I was already calling the police, of course, and I told her as much, but this didn't seem to calm her down. I informed the police of the situation, and they immediately asked me if she had gotten out of a specific taxi. Now I won't disclose the cab company's name, but I didn't know if she had or not, so they said they were sending some officers over. After I got off the phone, she was a little calmer, but she kept looking frantically around the lobby. I tried to assure her that everything would be fine, but it didn't seem like she heard a word I said. She started to wander off down the hall, so I followed her. She went into our large breakfast room, where she backed herself up into a corner, now staring directly at me with increasing terror. I kept telling her everything was all right, and I did not approach her. I just wanted to keep her in my sight, but I had no desire to get close to her. I mean, she was in panic mode already. Me getting closer might just trigger it more. I tried asking her what had happened, but she would not respond. She just kept telling me I had to help her, and that she was afraid that they would get her. I told her it was okay, that I had called the police. She looked horrified at that, and asked me why I had called the cops on her. I explained I had called the cops for her, and not on her. I also clarified that the police would be there to help keep her safe. She responded to this with,
Don't fucking touch me!
I was roughly 50 feet away from her and had not moved at all. It was about then that my fears started to ease up, because I realized that there probably wasn't of them after all, and this girl was simply having some sort of mental breakdown. Or probably some drug-related effect. The cops arrived shortly after, and rather than being relieved, she was scared of them and was reluctant to speak. They sat her in a chair in the lobby and tried to ask her name, but she just drew her knees up to her chest and started hyperventilating. Then she got up and speed walked down the hall. Cops ended up escorting her out of the building. She wasn't struggling or screaming, but she definitely seemed distraught and confused. When it was all said and done, I reviewed the security footage from outside the hotel, and it looks like she had been in a cab on the road next to the hotel. Then she had bailed out of it when it slowed down for the stoplight, and she had come running immediately to our front door, screaming. At no point was she pursued by anyone or anything. From what the police told me, the cab driver called the cops before I did, since she had skipped out on the fare. I never knew what happened to her after that. I didn't see her on the arrest reports, so I don't think they charged her with anything, and I hope they were able to get her somewhere safe. But that was one hell of a night. And nothing risky happened to me. But that incident scarred me for life. For the next few weeks, I would always have those haunting memories flashing. The way she begged for me to let her in, and then the entire scene inside the breakfast room, it was a traumatizing memory. Not not exactly a night shift, but as a bartender, I'm usually heading home around 2 to 4 a.m. On a slow Monday night, we were about to close the restaurant when a seemingly homeless woman walked into the bar. Working in a city, we're used to vagrants making their way into the bar, so kicking her out would be easy. My manager yelled to her,
"Hey, sorry! We're closing up! We won't be able to serve you! You'll have to leave!"
She kept walking slowly and silently toward the bar, staring straight ahead with a blank face. As she walked closer, we realized she looked unusual for a homeless woman. Her skin was gray. I've never seen a skin color like hers in my life. It wasn't dirty or old or tanned. It was a very light gray that was tight with almost no wrinkles. She also had a tattoo of 4 lines on her face. They all started at one point in the center of her chin, and then continued down her neck in a ray-like pattern. She also had no shoes on. She looked like an alien or someone from a different world altogether. Once she reached the bar, she went to pull out a chair when my manager yelled again,
"Hey! We're closing up! Also, you can't be in here without shoes on! You need to leave now!"
She continued to sit down, then turned her head slowly to me. Locking eyes with me, she said,
I like you.
At this point, my finger was on the bar panic button. Just so you know, most bars have these bar panic buttons hidden behind the counters, so they can get immediate police response in case of an emergency. And having worked in a bar for over a year, I know all sorts of shit can go down here. But before I could press it, our bouncer finally made his way over and put his hand on her shoulder to ask her to leave. The minute he touched her, she broke out into this extremely loud, high-pitched, manic scream. It was like a scream out of a horror movie. What made it creepier, the whole time she was screaming, she was looking at me dead in the eye without blinking. The plain straight face staring at me made my blood run cold. I felt my knees were turning weak. She wasn't moving at all, so my bouncer went to forcibly remove her from the bar. I pushed the panic button and watched my bouncer pull away this woman as she was screaming uncontrollably, all while staring straight at me. The bouncer had to call another one just to control this crazy lady. Somehow this huge hunk was finding it difficult to handle this pale and sickly lady. Eventually, they pushed her out of the bar. I heard that she created a ruckus outside too. She even cursed the bouncers and the manager. And by cursed, I mean an actual curse and not just abuses. Fortunately, the police came fairly quickly and took the woman away. I did not see her ever again. The manager took a week off after that incident. And one of the bouncers even fell sick for a couple of days, right after that incident. When he returned, he described that her skin was hard like a crocodile's skin, and her tongue was pointy like a snake. To this day, that is still the creepiest night I've ever had at work. Night shift pays well, but it comes with its risks. I used to work at a pub that was 2 miles from my house. My shift ended at about 11 one night. I stayed there for a couple of drinks, then started walking home. Now, this had been an exceptional night for me tip-wise, and I had close to $400 in cash on me at the time. Between the pub and my house was exactly one street light about a quarter mile from the pub. The rest of the walk was in complete darkness. This too was a dark night. It was close to the new moon, and cloudy to boot, so it was almost pitch black. Now I live out in the boonies, so there isn't even much light pollution to help out. Not long after I leave the pub, a car slowly drives by me. About a quarter mile down the road, the car slows to a stop, and it just sits there. I stop walking and watch the car. It sits for a few minutes, then slowly drives away. A couple of minutes later, the same car comes slowly driving back by me in the opposite lane. It gets by me, drives a bit down the road, and slows to a stop again. Then it does a U-turn and starts creeping back down the road towards me with the lights off. At this point, I'm terrified to the core. I don't have a cell phone at the time, and there was no one around to see what was going on. The car is between me and the pub, so I can't get back to the safety there. My house is still about 1.5 miles away, so there was no way that I can quickly escape there. I think quickly, and I run off the road into the woods, and then I duck down behind a bush. I watch for the car, but it's too dark to see it with the lights off and bushes, trees along with the undergrowth between me and the road. I sit there for about 10 minutes, but don't see or hear anything. I'm about to make my way back to the road when I hear car doors closing. Now I'm really panicking. It feels like my chest is about to explode. The hair on the back of my neck is standing up. I keep imagining someone sneaking up behind me. I stay hidden and hope to God that whoever it is doesn't find me. I don't know how long I stayed there in that exact spot, but I eventually heard car doors again, and then heard the car passing by. I give it a couple of minutes, and then ease back to the road. When I see it's clear, I haul ass back to the pub and let my boss know what happened. He said then and there that I'm never to walk home at night again. Either him, his brother, or his mom will give me a lift home. When the other servers and the kitchen staff heard what happened, they all said the same thing. I have never been that terrified before. Since I work night shift in a psych facility, I have experienced and seen a lot of crazy things. Things and incidents that made me want to even quit working here. Basically, I've seen a lot of things working at night. From people coming in high and psychotic, to people huddling naked in the corner of a room whispering something. The scariest thing I have ever seen was a patient coming out to the nurse's station and saying someone is outside of their window looking in. From admission, they had been experiencing pretty strong hallucinations, so we assumed this was another one. So we weren't much bothered by the claims. But the patient kept insisting. Now, to provide some ease, we went into the room to verify that there was no one there. Honestly, it was to provide them some relief and comfort. We have removable draw curtains in rooms, and they were closed shut. We even walked up to it and asked if it was that specific window. The patients told us that it was the case. We shook our head and gave one another a look. Eventually, we drew it open and had quite possibly the biggest scare of my life. There was somebody standing there wide-eyed and staring right back at us through the window. He ran off when we saw him. He did not utter a word. He was just standing there all the time, watching. The moment we saw him, he did not say or scream or make any kind of sound. He just grinned at us, turned around, and dashed in the opposite direction. We ended up calling the police as well as the security. They never found the guy and we never saw him again. It still creeps me out to this day. I wonder what he wanted from the patients. He was getting some pleasure out of just watching them. Though I have a few paranormal stories to share from my night shift duties, the creepiest stories are sometimes involving people who are just plain weird. I used to work with a popular gaming company and became the shift supervisor for the 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. One of my CSA representatives was a bit on the creepy dude type. He tends to freak out some of our female staff with some inappropriate jokes, which borders more on lack of tact rather than actual sexual harassment. He'd mostly stop if I tell him so. One evening during our 2 a.m. lunch break, the girls would go down in groups to a nearby 24/7 KFC or McDonald's across the street, while some of us would go to various parts of the floor where we hang to have breaks. The girls came back scared. One was also a supervisor. Apparently, creepy dude was at the main lobby, talking to someone who wasn't there. Make matters worse, he brought a weapon with him. Naturally, my girls were freaked out, and the guys on my floor won't approach him. I was tired, swamped with work, and had a deadline for a report in a few hours, so I did not need this shit at this time. So I went down and sure enough, my creepy CSA is having a livid conversation with air. I followed him all the way through to the elevator landing, where he was having an argument with some invisible person. He reminded me of an angry Italian with his hand gestures. Normally I would be freaked out too, but since I was tired and hungry, or like the kids call nowadays hangry, that overrode any fear I had. And the weapon, it was a Kendo sword. I knew it because I took Kendo in my college years. He would swing that Kendo sword around a bit. Pretty much the guy was schizo freaking out. He also had this glassy look in his eyes. I yelled, What are you doing? He turned to face me, just staring. We did a few seconds of a stare off. But again, I was not having any of this and said, Dude, you know bringing a sword to the office is against company policy. Are you done with the report? Like a switch that just turned on, he finally responded how his dead sister was following him, harassing him, and was on her way to harass the girls. He may have touched the hair of one of my girls too, which at this point made me livid. I forgot exactly what I told him after, but told him to give me the sword and go back to the office to finish off his work. He obediently complied, and an hour after, I made the whole "come see me in my office" routine. He spoke to my managers, where he was given some sort of discipline. He wasn't fired for that incident. And to be honest, he was scared of me after that. Anyway, I kept my eye on this guy for the remainder of my time with the company, as I am dead sure he was legit crazy. I also told him if he needs help with his sister, to seek professional help. He did a few more creepy stuff and would still talk to thin air or walls, or a pencil case, but not as bad as the incident with the Kendo sword. On my last day with the company, he gave me his Kendo sword as a parting gift. He had my name carved into it. Pretty nice sword. It now hangs above my bedroom. He did got fired a year later due to creepiness and performance issues. So I work at a cafe in the downtown area. And where I work, there are quite a few homeless shelters in range, and a huge drug problem in the vicinity. One day I'm working behind the bar, and this redhead kid, who was probably in his early 20s, sits down in our seating area and starts chanting shit under his breath. After a minute or two, he starts moving his hands around like he's casting a spell. He then gets up, starts yelling and disturbing everyone. I walk over to him and tell him that he needs to leave for the day. Dude looks at me straight in the eye and says,
"This is all a giant game. I'll fucking kill you with one finger."
At this point, I was like, whatever. You see, I get death threats a lot down here, so that was no biggie. I shoo him on his way, and that's that. Fast forward to when we're closing up, around 9 p.m. Yes, it is not technically a night shift, but it gets dark up here, so it counts as one. I lock the doors and start heading to the parking garage where my car is parked. It's probably about 6 blocks away, and that was no big deal. During winters, up here it is insanely dark. So it's already pretty creepy in downtown. About a block or two of walking, and I hear this hissing noise. I freak the fuck out, because I can't see anyone around. I pick up the pace a bit, then I hear hurried footsteps in the snow behind me. I was too scared to look around. I rushed it to the staircase toward the garage, because I wasn't going to wait for the elevator. I'm about a staircase up, and I hear the door I just went through slam shut. I finally make it to my car, get in as fast as possible. I look around, and guess what? There's the redhead from earlier. Only this time he's fucking furious. He sees me in my car and books at full speed, and starts hitting my window screaming,
"I'm going to fucking kill you."
I door checked him and drove the heck away. I called the cops the next morning, and they found the dude. Apparently, he thinks he's in the Illuminati, and completely corroborated my story to the police. Small jail time and 1 restraining order later, never seen him again. Shit like this happens a lot in the town I work. I worked at Walmart night shift for a while. Every single Friday night, without fail, this old woman with 2 children would come in at around 10 or 11. She was obnoxiously loud as she shopped. She always grabbed a bunch of different things and stuffed it all in her cart, a few times asking one of our employees to help her grab something. Every Friday night, it was the same thing. Her talking voice was almost yelling for people like us, and stayed in the store sometimes until 5 a.m. I worked 10 to 7 in the morning. She grabbed a cart full of stuff, which seemed like it was from every section of the store. She would do this with her 2 girls, and the weirdest part wasn't even that. It was the fact that she would leave her cart somewhere and walk out with nothing. Spent hours in the store grabbing a bunch of shit with her 2 kids, and walked out without anything every Friday. I never figured out why. It's not creepy scary, it's more creepy weird. There was also a creepy sad time where this woman was shopping and she was obviously high on drugs. Her face showed it. She was basically unresponsive to anyone and anything as she walked through the store. I only saw her once walking by with her kid. He was about 7 saying things like,
"Hey, can you hear me? It's me. Why aren't you talking to me?"
and stuff like that. Really sad. But yes, those are my overnight stories. I don't work there anymore.